Richmond Raceway in Central Virginia has produced some pretty classic and entertaining races over the years. Its D-shaped format and 3/4 of a mile length make it one of a kind on the NASCAR circuit. Over the course of many years, the track personnel coated the surface with sealer, making it slick and tough for the drivers to handle. Racing side by side was daring, and having a tight car on the inside of someone almost guaranteed contact and often resulted in crashes. It's seen Dale Earnhardt get out of his car mid-race and clean his own windshield. It's seen him and Darrell Waltrip take each other out for the win. It's had a reconfiguration and expanded seating. From 2004 to 2017, it hosted the final race of NASCAR's regular season before the chase. But for 2 years, it had a certain theme to it that caught a lot of attention, but ended in disappointment and torn up race cars. I present to you The Curse of the Looney Tunes. Not long after the turn of the new millennium, Chevrolet got its hands all over the sponsorship of this track. It would be a partnership that lasted for over 10 years, but it started with a single race date in September 2001, with Pontiac having the first race in the spring. They didn't just sponsor the race, however, they made it fun and got creative. A select few Chevy drivers sported their own unique Looney Tunes paint schemes that had a specifically crafted prism paint to give them an extra sparkling pop under the lights. This was when NASCAR was really starting to explode in popularity, and things like this only added more intrigue and appealed to kids all over the landscape. The manufacturers and sponsors knew how to advertise and had hands-on relationships with the teams. So without further ado, here's how the 2001 Chevy Monte Carlo 400 went down. First, let's run down the drivers participating in this theme. In the 1 car, Kenny Wallace. It would normally be Steve Park, but he had just gotten a career-altering injury 1 week prior. Ironman Terry Labonte in the 5, Series Superstar Jeff Gordon in the 24, rookie Kevin Harvick in the 29, Busch Series champ Jeff Green in the 30, and veterans Mike Skinner in the 31 and Bobby Hamilton in the 55. Jeff Gordon would start on the pole with Bugs Bunny on board. He had a massive points lead coming in and looked to pat his cushion on Ricky Rudd and Sterling Marlin. Early on, it looked as if he would do just that by pulling away to a comfortable lead. But after a few cautions, he would begin to descend through the top 5 and into the clutches of Marlin. And on lap 35, it all went terribly wrong.
The drivers who pitted on the contact. Gordon's in the wall. The championship leader in the wall early at Richmond.
It was rabbit season. This was a disastrous outcome for Gordon, not only being out of contention this early, but the drivers right behind him in the standings running up front. He would get back out on the track later, but over 100 laps down. Karma would end up biting Marlin anyway, as his transmission burned out under a pit stop. The race would unfold and laps got turned, and Rusty Wallace and Ricky Rudd were dominating for much of the night and looked to be head and shoulders above the rest of the field. 2 Fords. So right off the bat, it wasn't looking too good for Chevy, as no one with a bow tie or Looney Tunes character on their car was in sight. Their headlining driver was in the garage, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. was the only one that even looked to have a whiff of a winning ride. He was part of the Winston Noble $1 Million Challenge, and that would be a consolation for Chevy for sure, but to that point, he had nothing for the 2 leaders. Fast forward to about midway through the race, and things start avalanching. Jeff Green, who'd been running mid-pack all night, had a tire go down and hits the wall, ending his uneventful night in sparks. I guess it was really duck season. Not long after, Terry Labonte, who was running solidly in the top 10, made wall contact and his exhaust pipe started dragging the ground. NASCAR black flagged him and he went several laps down. But that's not the end of his misery. Shortly after, he's back out on the track, the tailpipe comes loose and he runs over his own debris, cutting his tire and spinning him hard into the wall on the driver's side. Just like that, 3 Looney Tunes are out of it. I bet if you had an in-car camera on all the other participating drivers, they had to be sweating bullets wondering who was next. Well, it would be Mike Skinner, cutting a right front tire and pounding the wall, crumpling his race car, and it became a pile of junk. So who's left? It's only 3, and Kevin Harvick, a rookie of all people, is leading the charge, and he looks to have some hope. He's been in the top 10 all night, but not quite a winning car. Bobby Hamilton was having one of his best seasons, but never threatened the top 10. And Kenny Wallace was fresh into a new ride and didn't possess quite the talent the injured Steve Park had, and he was outside the top 20 just slugging along. The marketing stunt by Chevy was looking bleak at this point. But in the closing laps, Harvick's car got considerably better and an intense battle broke out between he, Wallace, and Rudd. Wallace had led over 270 laps and looked to have the race wrapped up for the most part, but the competition caught up to him. He got loose coming out of turn 2 and was booted out of the lead for good. Suddenly, Harvick looked like the saving grace and could taste the lead. With less than 20 to go, he slid up off of 2 right into Rudd and scurried off with the lead. But as a rookie, you don't rough up a veteran and get away with it. Rudd had enough time to chase him back down, return the favor, and rode off with the win, breaking Chevy's hearts and the Tasmanian Devils. So let's look at the aftermath of this calamity. The results of the drivers with the Looney Tunes rides after Harvick finishing second were Hamilton 13th, Kenny Wallace 21st, Mike Skinner 33rd, Jeff Gordon 36th, Terry Labonte 38th, and Jeff Green rounding it out in 40th. Yikes. Surely it couldn't get worse than this, right? The very next year, Chevy wanted a do-over, and rightfully so. Sure, all the fanfare and decoration was fine for the first time, but there were no results to show for it. It was ugly. So they ran it back again in 2002, looking for some better luck this time around. They'd probably settle for any Chevy driver winning at this point. Chevrolet General Manager Kurt Ritter expressed his desire before the race how bad they wanted this. But this time, they bolstered their stable and gave themselves a better chance of success by adding an additional car to the promotion and an emerging star, rookie Jimmy Johnson, who was having quick success and 2 wins already up until this race. The 2002 rundown of participating drivers were Mike Skinner in the 4 this time, Terry Labonte in the 5, Jeff Gordon in the 24, Joe Nemechek in the 25, Kevin Harvick in the 29, Jeff Green in the 30, Robbie Gordon in the 31, the aforementioned Johnson in the 48, and up-and-coming Greg Biffle subbing for the injured Bobby Hamilton in the 55. Seems like a recharged and improved bunch, right? Well, let's just say there was already a major anomaly before it even started. Jeff Gordon crashed his car in practice, and evidently each driver got 1 car with their respective paint scheme, robbing every one of Gordon's new Bugs Bunny ride from the get-go. Once again, the poster boy of this whole shebang was in an early setback, but he would revert to the classic DuPont colors anyway. I'll preface this race by saying Chevy actually started the weekend off right. Dale Jr. went down to the Busch race in a car going right along with what they wanted and dominated the race. So that's somewhat a win, but they wanted it done on the bigger stage. This race actually fell right before the 1-year anniversary of 9/11 and a mesmerizing pre-race show took place. Johnson started on the pole, like Gordon last year, giving a sign of optimism for the event. But once the race started, an absolute melee broke loose. A show car as part of the Winston Noble Challenge put oil down on the pace laps, and Johnson got squirrely on lap 2 and gave way to his rookie counterpart Ryan Newman. Not sure if that had anything to do with it, but he wouldn't see the lead again. A rash of wrecks broke out, and one caused a red flag and injured Sterling Marlin. The race definitely started with no rhythm. Shortly after it got back underway, Terry Labonte became the first victims of the Looney Tunes fleet. He started 3rd and was once again having a really good run going in a rough last chapter of his career. This would end his night, and also cause tempers to flare on pit road. Later on, Jeff Gordon would once again succumb to this event, but this time his own team did him in. A camshaft broke in the engine, sending him behind the wall and only coming back out for a few laps. He would be 0 for 2 and even finishing this race, and it was just a sucky weekend for him all around. On lap 80, Matt Kenseth would cut a tire down and rough up his right front fender, losing a lap in the process. What does he have to do with any of this? Well, you'll see later on. Greg Biffle would find himself in trouble, spinning up against the wall and luckily dodged traffic without a serious incident. He would actually come back to lead several laps during green flag stops as he was off sequence, but we're not done with him yet. Just over halfway through the race, most of the select drivers were running mid-pack, making little to no noise. A lot of this was based on these drivers just not having good equipment, good seasons, or good teams, but there was still plenty of racing left. Robbie Gordon, an aggressive driver with a fierce bad side, would get into Johnny Benson and put him in the wall, and Robbie damaged his right side. He would go on to be black flagged with a few laps left for trailing smoke, leaving him well out of contention. As for Biffle, he would end up pounding the wall and getting into Kurt Busch, spinning him around and finishing him off, but he would see better days in a more stable ride. In the back half of the race, Matt Kenseth would lead much of it, and Newman had his share of control in the early part. Once again, two Fords. Wait a second, Matt Kenseth? Didn't he lose a lap after that cut tire? Well, he got it back under green not too long after. He had the best pit crew week in and week out that year, and they knew how to get him back into it. Kevin Harvick, who had been running in the top 10 most of the night, ran out of gas among plenty others and had to pit. Johnson did as well. Kenseth was able to stretch his fuel and no one could come close, as he ended up getting his 4th win in his breakout season. Once again, Chevy came up empty, not even their own manufacturer in victory lane. The results this time, Jeff Green of all people being the highest finisher in 3rd. He just had a quiet, solid night with no mistakes and the fuel strategy worked out for him. Johnson and Harvick were 13th and 18th a lap down respectively as a result of late pit stops. Mike Skinner 22nd, Nemechek 25th, and Robbie Gordon 28th, both 3 laps down. Biffle 33rd, Jeff Gordon 40th with his engine troubles, and Labonte rounding it out in 41st. 2 total drivers from both races in the top 10. So what went wrong? It was just a combination of circumstances and faster guys beating them. Ford didn't have a great year in 2001, but Yates figured something out that year that Roush didn't. In 2002, Roush began what was a dynasty in the series, winning 2 championships in a row the following 2 years. If Jeff Gordon hadn't been taken out, maybe he got it done. If Harvick was able to pass Rudd clean, maybe he would get the win. Maybe if a couple cars ran out of fuel in the second race, it could fall in Jeff Green's lap. But one thing is for sure, a lot of avoidable wrecks took place that didn't even give most drivers a chance. It just wasn't meant to be, and this event was no more. Chevy would rebrand this race to the Chevy Rock and Roll 400 in 2003 and last all the way through 2009. It would feature the same concept with a select group of drivers donning rock bands with their sponsors, but this would also see tumultuous times, like the very first year, with Harvick and Rudd once again going at it. Harvick would eventually win participating in this, but Chevy just never could string together any success with it. The track is Toyota sponsored now, and this theme is long in the rear view. But looking back, it was still a fun novelty that sold a lot of diecast and put on good races when Richmond was still entertaining. Sure, it was a failure, but just another attraction that got me more into racing growing up. I wish NASCAR would do stuff like this again. It would certainly help bring more fun along. And I want to know y'all's favorite schemes from this in the comments. Well, that's it for me this time, guys. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe like your life depends on it. This has been a Platinum Paradise video.